Hello everybody, my name is Raviraj Palwankar. This is my colleague Vinay Gupta. We work as technical leads in Decos. A very warm welcome to everyone and thank you for joining the webinar and sparing your time from your busy schedules. And good morning to everyone who's joining from the States and good afternoon to everyone who has joined from Europe. Today we will be talking about Zero Trust architecture and its relevance in today's world. We will also be talking about the traditional security perimeter model which is most commonly used by organizations. The audio and video for this webinar is going to be disabled for the audience. So I would request you to post your questions through the chat at the end of the presentation. And there is a small poll coming up on your screens, which will take just a minute. We will take a pause till then, and post the poll, my colleague Vinay will take over.
So hello everyone, I'm Vinay and thank you for participating in the poll. You will be able to see the result on your screen. Now we shall continue with today's presentation. So we will be talking about what all traditional models are present today, then the drawbacks or flaw of them. Then we'll see what is the need of zero trust and how the zero trust can overcome the flaw of perimeter model. Afterward, we'll see which all components are required to form a zero trust architecture. And then we'll move towards implementation and scope of zero trust. And then we'll see the benefits the organization will get from zero trust architecture. And afterward, we'll conclude towards it. And in the end, we'll be taking a Q&A. So I'll start with the perimeter model. So a network perimeter is the secured boundary between the private and the locally managed side of a network. Often a company's intranet and the public-facing side of the network, often the internet. The most commonly used perimeter security models are firewall and VPN. So firewalls are designed to protect corporate systems from malicious attack by raising security defenses that ward off threats from outside of the perimeter. This is often referred to as the castle and moat approach. The issue with this approach is that it assumes anyone within the network can be trusted. Now, the second model is VPN. So in VPN, the encrypted connection is made to the internet from a device to a network. The encrypted connection helps ensure that sensitive data is safely transmitted. It prevents unauthorized people from eavesdropping on the traffic and allows the user to conduct work remotely. And now there are two other systems which help us to set up the perimeter is IDS and IPS, which is intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. So in IDS, we analyze and monitor network traffic for signs that indicate attackers are using a known cyber threat to infiltrate and steal data from your network. In IPS, it is living in the same area of the network as firewall, between the outside world and the internal network. IPS proactively deny network traffic based on the security profile if the packet is representing a known security threat. Now both these IDS and IPS are parts of the network infrastructure, and these IDS and IPS compare the network packet to a cyber threat database containing known signature of cyber attacks and flag any matching packets. The perimeter and zero trust model are fundamentally different from each other. The perimeter model attempts to build a wall between trusted and untrusted resources, local network and the internet. On the other hand, the zero trust model basically accepts the reality that the bad guys are everywhere. So zero trust assumes that the network is already exposed and it takes the necessary step to prevent it and to stop it. So as per the reports of M-Trends 2021, they have collected some stats on two parameters. The first is internal detection. It means that the organization independently discovered that it has been compromised. And the second parameter was external notification. It is when an outside entity or third party entity is informing the organization that the system has been compromised. So according to that report, the external notification was 41% and the internal notification was 59%. So you can see that the external numbers are pretty high. Means 41% time the third party is informing about the damages. Now there is one more parameter which is dwell time. So dwell time is calculated as the number of days an attacker is present in victim's environment before they are detected. So in that report, the average dwell time was 24 days. So you can see that approx 1 month, the attacker is residing in a network and exploiting all the systems and data and stealing the important information. Yeah. So now we'll look into the drawbacks of parameter model. So Raviraj will shed more light to it.
Thank you, Vinay. So with the current dynamic and hybrid nature of the data centers and the corporate networks which are spreading across multiple locations or cloud environments, there is no way that one static perimeter can control and secure all of them. And also, it's no secret, however, that modern applications and threats easily circumvent these traditional network firewalls. So building a static perimeter for each data center or each dynamic application environment is not operationally scalable. And in addition, maintaining a consistent security policy implementation across multiple vendors and environments such as VMware, AWS, Azure, Hyper-V, and so on is even more challenging. So once a hacker is in the network, he has access to the entire subnet and thus he can move laterally to other networks, just like a Trojan horse. So I would like to speak something more about firewalls. So firewalls is like when I mentioned, they are traditional security models. And firewalls are basically designed to protect corporate systems from malicious attacks from outside of the perimeter of the network. And firewalls are complex as well. And as many security experts quote, that complexity is the enemy of security. So, and also firewalls come with a greater weakness, however, that the firewalls do not sufficiently check the content that is flowing through them. And the widening use of HTTP tunneling and encryption in application softwares are bypassing these perimeter protections completely. The issue with this approach is that it assumes that anyone within the network can be trusted, which is wrong. And I would like to give an example of a data breach that happened with a firewall vendor in 2021. The vendor was called Assyrian. So Assyrian was using their legacy file transfer appliance, which is FTA, to transfer files that were too large to be sent via email. And there were full vulnerabilities in them which were exploited by the hackers and which affected like more than 100 companies, and in total sensitive and protected healthcare information of more than 3.5 million individuals was believed to be stolen. So I would like to shed some more light about VPN. So as Vinay mentioned, that VPN is basically when we basically used for remote work security. So when we log in into our organizations remotely, we will usually log in through a VPN. So, but with the adoption of smart technology these days, it is the likelihood of a hacker successfully breaching into a corporate network via poorly protected remote devices is increasing. So if a hacker compromises one smart device within a home network, then the potential to launch further attacks on other devices greatly increases. So in theory, hackers could potentially hijack a user's device, steal their login credentials, and easily bypass the VPN and get connected to your corporate network. So I would like to, so there is another poll coming up, which will again take just a minute of your time, and we'll again take a pause in the meantime.
Okay, so thank you for participating in the poll. You will be able to see the result on your screen. So let's continue to the next part, which is knowing about the zero trust. So as the zero trust says, trust no one both inside and outside of the network. It's a security framework requiring all users, whether in or outside the organization's network, to be authenticated, authorized, and continuously validated for security configuration and posture before being granted or keeping access to application and data. A zero trust security approach removes the idea of trust from users and network. It focuses on accessing resources in a secure manner, no matter network location, user, device, enforcing rigorous access control, and continually inspecting, monitoring, and logging network traffic. This requires data level protection, a strong identity architecture, and strategic microsegmentation to make multiple trust zones around an organization's digital resources. A zero trust architecture removes implicit trust and replaces it with adaptive explicit trust. Uh, Building an architecture that never trusts, always verify connection, and that assumes that a bad actor is active at all times leads to highly resilient, highly flexible environments that are much better suited to the demands of the modern workplace. These networks will be much better positioned to prevent an incident or compromise from becoming a full-scale breach by both making the attacker lives harder and giving defender more time and ability to react. Now, Raviraj will add more to it.
Yes, thank you, Vinay. So, zero trust basically is not a platform or a tool. It is a strategic approach to cybersecurity that secures an organization by eliminating the implicit trust and continuously validating every stage of digital interaction. So, rooted in the principle of never trust, always verify, zero trust is designed to protect modern environments and enable digital transformation by using strong authentication methods, leveraging network segmentation, providing layer 7 threat protection, and simplifying granular least access policies. So here we can, in technical terms, we can compare zero trust, implementing zero trust with designing a class in any programming language. So the right way to design a class or implement a class is declaring everything private in that class initially and gradually increase their access to other classes when other classes need access to that particular class. So this is similar when it comes to zero trust. With digital transformation accelerating in the form of growing hybrid workforce, continued migration to the cloud, and the transformation of security operations, taking a zero trust approach has never been more critical. And if done correctly, a zero trust architecture will always result in a higher overall level of security, but also it will reduce the security complexity and the operational overhead. So now we have another poll coming up, which will again take a minute of your time. And again, we'll be taking a pause until you reply to the poll. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again for participating in the poll. And again, you will see the result on your screen. So we'll continue to the next topic, which will tell what all components are required for designing a zero trust network. So zero trust assumes that the network has been already compromised and challenges the user or device. They have to prove that they are not attackers. So by default, zero trust assumes that everyone in the network is an attacker or an person who is trying to enter in the system without the permission. So in that way, a valid user has to prove the identity by going through multiple access level and validating the credential. Now, if the user or device is already in the network parameter, they have to go on through first the authentication process. Then they will go the second level of authentication, which can be MFA through the one-time access code or biometrics. And afterward, based on the roles and permission, they will be granted access to the desired application. Zero Trust Network Access, a comprehensive Zero Trust approach, encompasses user, application, and infrastructure. Users are the step one of any Zero Trust network. In this, the effort requires strong authentication of user identity, application of least access policies, and verification of user device integrity. The threats to an organization's network are people who have access to it. To begin with, these people called insider threats in Zero Trust include executives, current staff, ex-employees, contractors, and the other relevant stakeholders to whom the keys to the network are generally handed. Oftentimes, arbitrarily or without a thorough check, these can break the system. The second main part of Zero Trust is application. So applying a Zero Trust to application remove implicit trust with various components of application when they talk to each other. A fundamental concept of Zero Trust is that application cannot be trusted and continuous monitoring at runtime is necessary to validate their behavior. Now the third most important point is infrastructure, where everything infrastructure related is routers, switches, cloud, IoT, and supply chain. These should be addressed with a Zero Trust approach. Like you cannot keep any one point open, because if you keep any of the IoT devices or any switch open for the security loopholes, they can enter your network and break the system. Now we'll see the scope of Zero Trust model. So first, we should know what needs to be protected. So organization will need a dedicated cross-functional team drawn from different groups such as application and data security, network and infrastructure security, and user and device identity. Security operation personnel will also play an essential role in launching Zero Trust because they can help assess the risk. The second step would be understand the cybersecurity control already in place. So once we have identified what all application or data needs to be protected, the next step would be to evaluate what all current cybersecurity control are in place. Many of the IT department's existing security tools will likely be useful when implementing a Zero Trust strategy. However, they may be deployed in the wrong location or use an outdated parameter architecture model. Afterward, we'll see what all tools and modern architecture is required. So in most cases, existing cybersecurity tools will not satisfy a complete end-to-end Zero Trust model. Additional tools must be added to provide extra layers of protection where security gaps have been identified during Zero Trust implementation. The good news is modern security tools have been designed to pick up the slack where traditional tools fall short. Once we figure out the controls in place and the new tools and architecture, we have to create a policy. So all the necessary technologies are in place to build a Zero Trust framework. Security administrators are asked with putting those tools to use. This is accomplished by creating and implementing a Zero Trust policy that can then be applied to the various security tools. Zero Trust policies are rules that permit access to various resources based on a strict set of standards to only allow access when they're absolutely necessary. Policies should outline exactly which user, devices, and applications should have access to which data and services and when. Afterwards, when we set up the whole structure, we should put one last check, which is the monitoring and alerting tool. Because in case if we are missing any one of the point, we can cover up using this tool. So it will be continuously assessing your network and applying the changes as per that. These tools will give you the security staff the appropriate level of visibility into whether the implemented security policies are working or not, whether the cracks in the framework have been exploited. It is important to remember that nothing is completely secure. Even with a Zero Trust framework in place, tools must still be used to capture when malicious activity occurs so that they can be quickly stamped out. Organizations should also perform root cause analysis to identify and fix any flaws in the existing security posture. Now, Raviraj will put more light to it.
Yes, thank you, Vinay. So zero trust basically is focused on user access, role-based access, lateral movement, microperimeters, and user analytics and the user's behavior. So for a mature company, a zero trust will be a layer above and below their existing security procedures. So controlling a user is pointless if the resources that they are accessing are vulnerable themselves. So why, if for an example, why would you ever give administrative rights to an application that could be vulnerable? Right? You would not. So you have to keep it restricted that way. So that is the least access policy. So for zero trust to be effective, it needs to consider not only the user, but also the risks that are associated with the resources that the user is accessing themselves. Handing over to Vinay.
Yeah. So in this section, we'll see how we can implement a zero trust network. So first, we need to figure out that zero trust network is not a traditional VPN, because in VPN we simply create a secure tunnel between the user's machine to internet, and in that way we are not putting any restriction on the application access and all other resources. So in that, keeping that in mind, we have to design the zero trust network a bit differently than the VPN, and we should configure each access, each application with the separate access they require to work on. Afterward, we should document the application uses. So as I mentioned that we should not give a default access to everyone, like read access, so that every user can read the data. Instead of that, we should identify which all user are requiring the read access and which all user require write access or no access at all. And in that way, we can document the application uses. Next would be to clean up the access. So we should take the opportunity to eliminate application access privileges and entitlement that are no longer relevant. So in case if the person is change his role, or maybe he's moved to a different team, then we should immediately revoke all the access which was given to him in previous role. And we should only allow the necessary access as per his current role. Also, by meeting, we should give access based on the business team's need and the application teams to ensure that all the user access rights are current, not any previous level. Afterward, we should continuously tune policies to meet changing business needs. So the policies cannot be created once and forget. We should evaluate it in every 3 months or 6 months, and then figure out that what all changes are needed. If we are going too strict, or it is hampering the user's productivity or their work, then we should come up with some better solution, or we should come up at a level where we can match up with the employee's requirement as well, so that the security and usability should be managed instead of going too strict to the user. Last would be to negotiate with business leaders to overcome objections. So instead of going too strict, we should discuss with business users that why we are doing it and why we are revoking the access wherever it is not needed, and we can reach to a common agreement that we are doing this for securing the systems and allowing only those access which are required. So we are not giving access to everyone to access everything. Now we'll go through the benefits of zero trust model. So the first benefit would be reduces business and organizational risk. So zero trust assumes that all applications and services are malicious and are disallowed from communicating until they are positively verified by their identity attributes, immutable properties of the software or services themselves that meet predefined trust principles, such as authentication and authorization requirement. So that this will help you to reduce the business and organizational risk and save a lot of money to prevent such kind of attack if these things are already in place. The next benefit is providing access control over cloud and containerized environment. So with a zero trust security architecture, security policies are applied based on the identity of communicating workloads and are tied directly to the workload itself. In this way, security stays as close as possible to the assets that require protection and is not affected by network constructs such as IP address, ports, and protocol. As a result, protection not only travels with the workload where it tries to communicate, but remains unchanged even when the environment changes. The next benefit is it helps to reduce the data breach. Because zero trust is based on the principle of least privilege, every entity user, device, or workload is assumed to be hostile. As a result, every request is inspected, users and devices are authenticated, and permissions are assessed before trust is granted. And thus, this trust is continuously reassessed as the context changes. So, if someone has given a grant to access the basic page of the application, and if they try to enter the admin page, there should be a second level of check whether they have an authority to access that page or not, or that application or not. So these kind of access check will help the data breach. Now, continuous compliance can be the next benefit. Because zero trust shield all user and workload connections from the internet, so they cannot be exposed or exploited. This invisibility makes it simpler to demonstrate compliance with privacy standard and other regulation, and result in fewer finding and audit. So definitely, when you have a strong security framework in place, you will get very less findings in the audit, and the system is already safe. Now, the next benefit would be streamlining user access. So instead of giving all access to everyone, we can grant role-based access and then document which all permission are required to do their day-to-day work. Or based on the need, we can configure this access. So it should not happen that we have given an access for an application like for lifetime. We should reassess in every fixed interval, 15 days or 30 days, whether that access is still needed or not. If that is not needed, we should immediately revoke that and give the necessary action. Now, over to you, Raviraj.
Yes, thank you, Vinay. So I would like to conclude the presentation here. So the conclusion here, according to us, would be that the important factor to consider while designing a zero trust framework in an organization is that it should be secure, but it should not be restrictive, that it interrupts an organization's day-to-day work. And devices and applications these days are built with high security standards, which will still be used in the future. And by then, new vulnerabilities would have been discovered, obviously. Therefore, it is imperative that the security framework which we design today should stay relevant for the foreseeable future as well. So organizations might be hesitant to make a move towards zero trust architecture, considering the financial aspects, the implementation efforts, and the time that it might require, as they cannot risk interrupting their work for too long, right? So especially after the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected the whole world, so it has become essential that we secure our resources, as most people are working remotely and every individual's home network cannot be as secure as your organization's network. And thus, it is always better to make a start towards a zero trust architecture than to not move forward at all. Therefore, I would request you all to discuss with your IT heads and your CTOs about the zero trust architecture model and how it could help your organization from preventing cyber attacks.
Okay, so now we'll move toward the last section, which is question and answer. So we are at the end of the presentation, and we will be taking up some questions which we have received through the chat. The first question is, what could be the starting point for implementing zero trust architecture at our workplace? So the answer can be, in zero trust, one of the first steps is the identification of network's most critical and valuable data, assets, application, and services. This helps prioritize where to start and also enables the creation of zero trust security policies. By identifying the most critical assets, organizations can focus efforts on prioritizing and protecting those assets as part of their zero trust journey. The next step is understanding who is the users are, which application they are using, and how they are connecting to determine and enforce policy that ensure secure access to your critical assets. I think this answers your question.
Okay, so I would like to take the next question. So the question is, what technical challenges one can expect while implementing ZTA within your organization? Okay, so like I mentioned before in the presentation, implementing zero trust security does not mean deploying a single technology or a solution. Instead, it is reimagining your enterprise's approach towards network security. So it could either be a layer uh, above your existing security procedures, or you can replace your whole legacy security solutions. So now the biggest obstacle that you might face is if you try to replace your legacy security solutions, because there might be hidden gaps in your in the security solution that you plan. So you need to take a holistic approach from start and from the ground up when you are planning to move towards a ZTA.
Okay, so we have one more question, which is what are different aspects that need to be considered while implementing ZTA within your organization? Okay, so I think I covered this point in the presentation as well. Like we discussed about first, we should identify what needs to be protected. It can be users, devices, data, services, and the network. The next could be understanding the cybersecurity control already in place. So we should see the current security architecture and then identify what all changes is required or what all additional tools can be put in place. So that is the next point. Like as the time is changing, day by day, the cyber criminals are also finding a new way to attack the system. So we should incorporate new tools and modern architecture to fight with them and put them in place. And once we are ready with these tools, we should create a security policy so that we can decide what all checks we will be performing before allowing any access to the system. The access check can be for users, devices, security endpoints. So all those policies we have to define. And once the policy is ready, the last step would be to have a preventive check. So by putting the monitoring and alerting tool in place. So in case if you are missing even 1% of security gap in the system, those tools and alert system will help you to determine whenever the attack happen, and you can immediately mitigate those by quickly taking an action. Yeah. So that's the answer.
Okay, so we have more questions coming in. I see one interesting question which I would like to answer. So the question is, has Decos adopted ZTA? So yes, we have. I would not say that we are completely a zero trust architecture organization, but we have started making a move towards ZTA. So for to give you a few examples, we are using Microsoft Authenticator for multi-factor authentication. We are also using Azure PIM. So as Vinay mentioned that we should incorporate new tools and modern architecture. So Azure PIM is one of them, which is privileged identity management, and it basically enables you to manage, control, monitor access to important resources inside your organization. And yes, one more thing I remember is we also use just-in-time access, which is a fundamental security practice as the name suggests, where the privilege is granted to access applications or systems uh, on time, as needed, on as needed basis. So yes, I hope that answers your question.
And then we will. So we have more questions coming in, but we'll take one last question here, which is it significant change moving from perimeter to zero trust architecture? Okay, so I would say not really. We can take step towards zero trust by putting existing tools in a proper place with security analysis, because every organization has different network and security policies in place. So we have to assess the policies first, then determine what all immediate steps are required to protect the system. After the assessment, we can provide what all impacted systems are, and we can put in the required tools in place to protect the system. So I think that I hope that answers your question. So we have received few more questions, and our moderator will get back to you with the answers. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar and your time. I hope we were able to provide some insight on this topic, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, everyone.